Welcome to Discuss With Us podcast, where we are unpacking the world through a Christian lens. I am your host, Darcy Durkowski, along with my husband, Brian, and our intention is to pose topics, trending and otherwise, and unpack them with the help of some research, insights from our different backgrounds, and even some listener input in a way that is thought-provoking and entertaining. So get comfortable, grab your favorite beverage, and discuss with us. Hi, friends. Important announcement before you go further into this episode that you're about to hear. Brian and I recorded this and then, the entire thing, and then I got to the end of it and realized our audio did not work correctly. So, the rest of our day went crazy after that with all kinds of different things, and so we are not going to be able to re-record it. And you can understand the audio. I just don't want you to think that this is our normal quality if you're new to this. So hope you still enjoy the episode, and we will have it fixed next week. I already know what went wrong, what happened, but we will fix it for next week. So hope you enjoy.
Welcome back to another episode of Discuss With Us. Darce.
Hi. I'm good. It feels so much more official this week being in studio.
By studio, we mean our shop.
Yeah, our setup.
But we are back in here. I finally plugged everything back in, and we made the treacherous journey from the house to the shop because it's cold outside.
Yeah. I actually had a couple of people, and of course, one is my mother.
Yes.
But say that they missed our intro song and everything.
It's good.
So
it's a good jam. Good.
I feel like I always just fast forward through those. I just hit the skip 30 seconds, but
sometimes some of the radio shows I like.
You like listening to it?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's
cool.
like if we're like Rush Limbaugh used to always do the it's like part of the show. So we're just
glad to hear people like it. Yeah.
Synonymous with us now.
I guess so. Okay, so this week our topic is New Year goals, which we're actively, I guess, a couple of weeks into. Although I do feel like January 1st
Half
is.
Of us are already done with them.
Yeah, January 1st is. I feel like only hardcore people start that day. I feel like most everybody else.
It was the middle of a week; it didn't count.
Yeah, exactly. And so that following Monday, I think, was the 6th. Which I feel like is when a lot of people started off. So maybe you're only a weekend at this point.
Yeah.
But we wanted to discuss New Year goals, and then kind of specifically one of our primary goals, because I feel like everybody has a handful.
We all do the same things pretty much.
Yeah. You have like a handful of things that you want to be better at in 2025, but you really probably have a primary goal or one that you're putting more of your focus and efforts on. And for us this year, that is kind of financial based. And so we'll get to that. We'll leave that one for last because we'll dig in a little deeper on that one. So, Brian, what are your New Year goals?
Same ones I always do. Hey, I'm going to carve out more time and work out more, which will make me healthier. And we're trying intermittent fasting for the first time, so I'm really hungry right now.
Yeah, very hungry.
That maybe spend some more time musically or something like that. Just all the same stuff you always say.
It is a good. I do appreciate New Year. Like some people are like, it's not New Year, new me. Like I do what I want and change when I want. And I do get that some people are like that. For me, I need the world to remind me that it's a good time to reset.
This is also hard because I can't help but I remember a lot of things. And so we're getting close to our 1-year anniversary.
Yes.
And one of our first ones, I guess maybe it was our first full one, I think was Lent, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so people, we are close to that again. Don't know how we're going to do another episode on it without saying the same things. But if you didn't listen, that's a good one because it's very similar. And I just remember talking about how New Year's resolutions are
They
a
usually,
failure for me.
well,
Which
yeah,
is
we
true.
just are usually more
My New Year's
focused.
resolution starts with Lent, typically.
Yeah,
It's just what
I
it's
guess
the truth.
that is true. You're only a couple months in. It's technically still the first quarter, so it's
Yeah.
okay. But yeah, I feel like what we had said in the past is that, you know, like with Lent, you have it religiously tied, which is hopefully of importance to
Mhm.
you, carries a lot of weight. And so we do, I feel like, tend to be more focused with that. But for the point of this discussion, and this is something I've tried to be mindful of when thinking about my New Year's goals, is this something that is purely selfish, which I get, and those are
Yes.
okay, or is it going to serve like what God would have for me in the end? And in that way, I feel like you can stay grounded.
I always try to do it.
Right.
But New Year's usually doesn't work pretty well.
So I mean, okay, you listed some, like,
Yeah, just the basics.
Mm-hmm. So mine is, of course, dieting, and like you mentioned, we're trying intermittent fasting, and
we're trying for 2 weeks, and we're gonna see. We're gonna see. Happens.
Yeah, I've read good things, and it's kind of in alignment with some of the things that I would like to, quote unquote, I don't know, fix or kickstart for my body. So
it's very ironic because most of the time I don't even want breakfast, and so the day that we can't have breakfast,
yeah,
that's all I want to do is eat now.
I know. But we'll see how it goes. So that's something that we're gonna give a go. But either way, even if the intermittent fasting isn't for us, just in general, trying to what's the term I'm looking for? Like, bridle my diet a little bit.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like that one. And then another, like, kind of specific one for me going into 2025 is that you and I are pretty good about meal planning, and I want to, more often than not, have the kids' meals align with ours.
Yes, that's a good idea.
And so we have put a little more effort into our meal planning, and not saying we won't have to tweak some things, or, you know, that they will just always turn their nose up at kale and stuff when I'm going to eat it.
Mm-hmm.
But actually, I don't know. Dylan likes kale, so we'll
see. 1 for 3.
Yeah. So just I know it's not going to happen 100% of the time. That's just, I'm giving myself grace on that. But more often than not, I would like for our suppers to be the same. So that's something I'm going to put a little more effort towards. And then for the podcast specifically, I've talked a little about, you know, goals with it. And I do think that having been a year in, we've got some ideas on how to kind of break it out, when we are going to need a full break, when we can kind of do some of the reflection style episodes like we did for Advent and stuff, and just how that'll all go. So I think we have it mapped out pretty well. And then I do, you know, one of our goals is always to get more listener input. So that will be at the forefront of everything that we try to do. But additionally, I started towards the end of the year, last year, I started doing like an email subscription, which is, I mean, totally free. It's not like I'm charging anybody for it, but and right now, more times than not, it's just letting you know a new episode has dropped, and usually giving a little photo content.
Fancy.
Yeah. But I am going to try to get something out to subscribers that's slightly more exclusive, or maybe a little more in depth on something that we discussed, or some additional content for
you got a lot of lofty goals, don't you?
Subscribers. Yeah, you gotta shoot for the stars, okay? Or what is it? Shoot for the moon, land among the stars.
Ah, there you
go.
Yeah,
see,
okay.
That's what I'm doing. So, but finally, the biggest one that you and I are both kind of focused on this year for us is our budgeting goals.
Yeah.
And I feel like it kind of came up because, as we discussed, our Christmas was pretty hectic because we were planning and getting ready to host a lot of family and everything. And so we were doing lots of projects around our house and property, mainly our property, mainly the fence. That was the one. That was the kicker. But it's done now.
Yeah. 3 sides.
3 sides of it. And yeah. But we also had like a roof replacement from storm. We had a lot going on. And just scratching some of those things off the list felt really good. And it's
Now we
really,
don't want to do anything.
it's really like the first time we've been able to tackle some of those things. So it made us think like, okay, well, what do we want to do this next year and how can we plan for it? Because, newsflash, we don't have a lot of disposable income, as they say.
Yeah.
It's all pretty much spoken for, which is fine. It's the phase of life that we're in and we're good with it, have everything I need. But a little forward thought could help us tackle some other things that we might want to do this year. So that's the really long version of the intro to this topic.
All right.
Anything else on New Year's goals? We'll check in with you guys on how intermittent fasting is going. What we're doing is like the 8-hour window where we eat, and then the other 16 are we stay out and we don't even snack or anything.
We'll see.
Yeah. One really good thing that saved this, because like 6 hours into declaring that we were doing this, I was like, is black coffee going to break the fast? It does not. Otherwise, I would have scrapped that.
Yeah.
But no, you can drink black coffee and it not break your fast. So we'll check in on that. Anything else on New Year's goals before we kind of dive into...
No, I don't ever get so stuck on New Year's goals. I'm the kind who just week to week I come up with new goals, and then some stick, some don't. So
yeah, that's fair. Okay, so budgeting. Let's just talk about one of the things that we have been talking about with budgeting and reflecting on is like, I don't know, how we did it before we were together, and then how we transitioned.
Yep.
How did you budget before me, Brian?
I didn't. It's ironic because I'm somewhat good with money. I at least know where it's going and stuff. But as a single person, I was not. I lived day to day, check to check, just money here, money there. No, I didn't like looking at my bank account. I was one of those. I was just, I either have money or I don't. Just did the basics of it, made sure my bills were covered, and just bachelored it as best I could.
I was good with money.
You had to be.
When I was single, because I knew all my own bills. I knew what I was going to spend and everything. And so each week when I got paid, I would just do the math on my paycheck minus what bills were going to be coming out that week, and then I would move everything else to savings.
Yeah, I never did that. I never did that.
I try to do that sometimes with Isn't it? But there's too complicated.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, there's too many additional factors in our life now. But I do still try to somewhat do that. But like I said, we just I don't have near the disposable income that I did when I was single either.
Yeah, I guess the only thing I will say is like I never would use like a credit card for anything.
Yeah, no, that's...
If I had to use a credit card, I immediately paid it off. But as far as like, I wasn't really saving besides, I mean, not a lot has changed here, but besides what I was already doing, like through employers and stuff like that.
401ks and stuff, yeah.
I wasn't doing anything extra, and I was lower contributing then, but I just lived day to day. So
I remember I wrote out my first budget when I was moving to Houston for my first job, big girl job anyways. And housing is super stinking expensive.
Newsflash.
In Houston, all over. It doesn't matter where you go. It is all just really expensive. And so I was not about to get into a, oh my gosh, I have to pause this, and we have, what just happened? Okay, so we have a new barn cat, and we, like, in our shop, and she just, that hole had to be there, right?
Yeah, it's like a perfect square. Must have been a knockout for like a wire, but
she just, the piece of the sheetrock just fell She pushed her paw through. Okay, well, she left now, so she's being shy. That was interesting. What was I saying? We're leaving this in.
You were talking about Houston.
Okay, yeah. So every dollar had to be accounted for because I wanted to make sure that I wasn't going to get myself in a position where I couldn't afford my rent. So that was the first time that I wrote out all my bills. And I kind of lived by that wherever I went after that, rewriting that budget. But my first real experience with being even more hardcore than that and just really making sure I was accounting for every dollar was when I got ready to buy my first house.
Yeah, hats off to you as a young single lady. Bought a house. So
it was always like preached to me growing up from my parents and my grandparents that real estate is the best investment. So early on I knew. And it also just was, it was a great house that I stumbled upon.
Yeah.
And I got a good deal on it. But as a single person, I didn't know how exactly I was going to afford it. So I had just one income. And it was a stretch. It wasn't really your typical like first home, I wouldn't say. But I really loved it and I felt strongly about it and made it happen. But that was kind of my first experience with having to, but even not even so much for the month to month. That was something I figured out, but also saving up for the closing costs because that was huge expense for, again, a single income who hadn't had a super long amount of time to save up additional income. So that was kind of the first thing. But the next one that I wanted to talk about, because I feel like this was super significant for both of us, was obviously, we got engaged and wedding planning.
Yeah.
We look back on this and we're like, that was one of the, you do marriage prep and stuff, which I think is all super important. But planning our wedding together and budgeting for that was, I don't know, what a teacher that was to us.
So that was my introduction to budgeting. Hardcore. Because when we had two incomes, we could do whatever.
Yeah, we could live large.
We were no kids. We were sitting pretty.
Yeah, we went out all the time. Didn't think about it.
Eat
it was
whatever
no big
you
deal.
Want, do whatever you want.
Yeah. Which is good that we did that because that's not in our foreseeable future.
Go to playoff games, sit right on the field.
Yeah. No, it was a good time.
Yeah,
it was a good time. Cheers to that. But yeah, so we sitting down, we got started really quickly planning our wedding because we didn't want to wait super long. And so decisions have to be made right off the bat. And I am a lover of Excel. And so I broke out my Excel spreadsheet and kind of projected what expenses we were going to have, and we discussed what was important to both of us and what wasn't. The size party that we were going to throw, and this is all not to say that we didn't have help from both of our parents contributed in a couple of different ways, but we were in the driver's seat of budgeting for that.
Yeah,
including what they were going to contribute, but.
No, even if people give you help, you got to figure out how to designate that.
Yeah.
But that was where it became, and I think we'll get in the weeds of this in a little bit, but we technically weren't even married yet, and we had one bank account, right?
I want to say we merged bank accounts either right before or right after.
I think
maybe it was before. I think you're probably right. But it wasn't long before. But yeah, we did.
Yeah, and it wasn't the whole time we were engaged. But at some point, I remember we did it because we.
I want to say it was like a month or two before the wedding because we were.
When all the payouts were coming, because that was the thing.
Yes.
Some of the stuff we were just buying, but we were also having to accumulate for all the day of.
Yeah, we were saving, and that was. So I set that number, which it was a lofty number. Weddings are super expensive.
Were then, still are.
Yeah, exactly. And so it was like, okay, this is what we have to have in our accounts. the day before the wedding.
Yeah.
And this is the time that we have to get there. And so we would build up.
So that was the first thing that, for me, you had already been doing it. But it was, I don't know if this happened for you, but for me, it was, like I said, I was one of those, I was like, oh, I don't want to look at the bank account. We had to look at that sucker like multiple times a day, like both of us.
Yeah.
I guess that's what happened. I think because I was at Chase, and so some of my things were easier to pay with. So and it worked out better for me that this happened. But like, I basically couldn't be selfish anymore in a lot of ways. Like things that I would just normally not think twice about, like, oh, hey, I want that golf club. Or
yeah, we're behind on
guitar.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna go get that. And now I couldn't do that. Now it had to be like, hey, do we have money for this? And the answer was always no. But especially that time of life. And so, like I'm saying, think back. We'd literally gone to the AL Championship.
Yeah.
Didn't think twice about, like, whatever the tickets are, we're going.
Yeah.
And that was great. And then we fast forward a couple months, and now it's like, you're going to buy a tabletop decoration, and so we have no money till the end of the week.
Yeah, exactly. But it was a great crash course on
one of the greatest things that happened, because it was you have the stress of the wedding.
Yes.
You have the stress of the money, and you have the stress of now we both have to make these decisions together.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say, is it was a great crash course in budgeting, but more so than that, it was like a crash course for marriage.
Yeah.
Because to your point, you had
and that's just the money factor. We had other things going on.
Alongside it, yeah. But there's so much that you're selfish in before that you have to then be transparent about and communicate with your partner about.
It sounds like something you read.
No, it's just a note I made. Because I think one of the things that budgets make you do is they make you be realistic and transparent, obviously if you're in some kind of marriage, and communicative, because it's our money, so we each are responsible for where it goes.
The other thing we had to get to was, it wasn't my money, your money, it was our money, and that really started taking form once it all started plopping into the same account.
Neither of us ever had a problem saying that, but it does take it a step further to then combine everything and have oversight. Like I said, the transparent part is also key.
Yes.
And I hear about couples all the time who have like separate stuff, and we still have a separate account, but for us, we really appreciated getting it all under one roof.
Yeah, I almost think we're more abnormal today having one. I think a lot of people.
Well, we were talking about this the other day.
Have two now?
Yeah, our parents' generation, I think, just always had one, and especially our grandparents' generation, because they got married so early.
Well, and there was a
typically.
lot of single house incomes.
And there was a lot of single house incomes, and so you did just have one account. But for us, people are getting married later and later now, and so you've already had, just like I just said, I moved to Houston. I bought my own house before you and I even got together. So, of course, I had my own things. And you had your own things.
Now. Like back then,
that's true too.
That was the thing we were saying. Like, who's paying the Netflix account? Who's paying Hulu? And they're all hooked up to cards. Because remember, it wasn't as simple as we thought to just combine.
No.
We had to transfer things over to different cards and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It was kind of a pain in the butt. But I will say, if you haven't done that, that's probably one of the easiest things you can do to help. Because it's all just coming in one road going out the other.
Yeah.
And everyone can see it.
Yeah.
It makes it easier to track.
Right. And one of the things that, like I just said, it's not like we just have one bank account either, and everybody's going to have different things. So this isn't saying like you're bad if you don't. But But like because I kept my other bank account almost just to have another one, like it almost felt like a
You just
security
wanted
thing.
it out.
Yeah. But that's like where we save. So,
Is it?
well, it's where we try to save. But I guess the key is that all of our bills come out of one.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the main thing we're getting at there. But okay, so yeah, wedding planning was a crash course.
The other thing with that
okay.
that I was going to say, because we were talking about this the other night. We had to get married in our church, we had to go through engaged encounters.
Yeah.
And then meet with the priest and take like this 200 question test.
Yeah.
It was like a compatibility test. I don't know whose it was or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
It would be fun to find that again and see if it was the same. But anyways, some of you may not have done that, but it asked, and you're engaged right now. So like when you do all this, and it was asking all kinds of things, like some really personal questions, but it was even like, who's going to pay the bills?
Yeah.
Who's going to do this? And you take it separately.
Right.
And then you come back together, and we met with the priest and went over all the questions, and we were doing different things at Engaged Encounters. That's a retreat that you go to for a weekend.
Yeah, they ask a lot of similar questions too, like have you figured out this? Have you talked about that?
Yeah, you do family planning, budgeting, all these things, and you break out into groups. And I was very obstinate of wanting to do it, but looking back on all of those things, because you and I talk a lot, so we had gotten through a lot of things. But there were things that came up that, frankly, we didn't need all the counseling. We just worked through it, but
it's a good prompt.
Yes, and so my point is, if you haven't done, especially if you're like a younger couple like us, you don't need to go somewhere for this. I'm sure you can find it online, but they will prompt you to things, and that's how I think we got some of the answers on budgeting and stuff. Like, just as an example, you pay the bills,
right?
Now that doesn't mean I just back out and don't know anything about it, but we kind of had those things set up, and it just asked questions to yourself that you had, some of them you're flying by, and then some of them you're
and it also sheds light on, I would consider you and me, and most, not all, married couples, I would say that we're compatible, right? We align in a lot of different areas, but nobody is fully 100% quote unquote compatible, I guess.
Right.
There are things that I hold in importance that you don't, and vice versa. Or you hold in less importance.
Name 5.
So no matter how compatible you think you are and how much you're well, yes, but that's important to him, so I'm always going to be really, I don't know, cognizant of that. No, you won't. So these prompts and these things that you kind of just get out in front of, and it forces you to be those words that I just said: realistic, transparent, communicative.
Yeah, well, and it gets you in a routine. Back then, I remember, because my mom pays the bills, and I think your mom does too, right?
Yeah, I think my parents have gone back and forth over the years, interestingly.
But we were both, because you had picked, I remember this question, because I picked Darcy's going to pay the bills. She's better with money than I am. And you said the same thing too, but I specifically remember so then we're going over the questions, and it was well, this isn't something where it's A, it's not set in stone that it has to be like this forever. And B, when we were in the, with the priest, it was this doesn't mean you check out on it either. And it doesn't mean, and it also doesn't mean you don't have a say in how the money gets spent. And so that's what I'm saying. Just going through some of this stuff can open doors, because there's stuff we just go through each other before we spend money and stuff like that. Not,
Oh yeah, I think we even. You know what?
Amazon
I think
packets show up, and I'm what are we doing? But for the most part.
No, you're bringing up a good point, and this is actually a really good example of kind of what we're talking about. Because, like you said, it's like, well, yeah, Darcy's going to pay the bills, and I knew that, and you knew that. Why did we need to go over it? But I think one of the other questions that it said, maybe, either way, it's a good example of this, is like, what's your threshold of something that Darcy should come to you about spending?
Right. It did ask.
And we
had
did
to put a number.
And I feel like, because we've talked to other couples about this before, that is going to vary for everybody. No judgment, but you should be in alignment about it, because if I come in and I bought something for $250 and Brian's like, excuse me, and I'm like, oh, I thought our number was 1,000. That's a good thing to know.
I forgot about that.
So it's a good example of these things that, not saying you can't work it out on the back end, but
no,
but it's so much easier to kind of get it
Sometimes
out.
that number changes.
Yeah, that's true. So yeah, here's your takeaway from this episode. Yeah. What's your can spend without asking number? I'm not asking you to say this. I'm asking
sometimes you
the
get
people.
mad if I go to like Panda Express, so I guess like
I only get mad
$15.
about that because you don't bring me back any. That's not a spending thing. Okay, so I think we've
so we made it through our wedding.
We made it through our wedding,
and
in a couple of years, I guess, or no? When? Yeah, it was about a couple of years.
I was like 2. Yeah, we had a kid, and so then that was the next thing. And frankly, this part's easy. Like budgeting for one kid, really, because we're at that same house, it didn't really change a lot. We made it through the wedding, and we were on a good pace then, because with all the planning and stuff we went through, we were able to come out the other side in like less than 6 months after our wedding. Like every credit card was zeroed back out and everything, or at least manageable. I don't know where it was, but where things really changed for us was when we moved out here.
Yeah, to our place now. So yeah, everything was very manageable. That's a good term over at the other house. But then this property came for sale. And there's a long story about that whole thing and how we even, could manage to look at this. But the price kept decreasing, and we had said, like, if it gets to this number, we'll put an offer in. Long story short, we did, but it was double.
Yeah, it was like Stretch Armstrong stretching to move out here.
And so beyond just like it caused us to not only say
it took our wedding planning to the next step.
Well, because we knew if we can make this happen, we are going to be house poor for a while.
So out came the spreadsheets.
Yeah, so out came my handy dandy spreadsheets, because I really felt strongly, and you did too.
Yeah, because we wanted to move here.
We wanted to move here. And so it's like, how are we going to make this work? Is this, what are we biting off?
Doable?
Is it doable? But not only that, because what we're getting at here is we ended up doing a 5-year budget.
Yeah.
And that was the big thing that I wanted to talk about with this, because I think I don't know that everybody does this type of thing, and also it just came up because it's been 5 years, and so we sat down to do another. That's where all this came from. So, like I said, we knew we were going to be quote unquote house poor. Is that the term? Because that always sounds like a paradox to me.
I think it's what it is.
What I'm getting at is we weren't going to have a lot of money left over after mortgage. But it was worth it to us if we could get it. But we were like, how long is that going to
can we do
last?
This for long?
Because our situation, I'm sharing a lot here, but we've got we needed to get the ag exemption back in place on this property. It was lost. And so it's a significant decrease in taxes after 5 years. And so we were like, is it going to be a whole 5 years that we're like super poor? Marker. And so we set out a budget, and I'll just kind of like detail how we did it, because I'd love to say just one of our listeners was super enthralled with this, but it's my mom that was like, you should detail how you do your 5-year budget.
Okay.
So I got out my handy dandy Excel spreadsheet, and there are undoubtedly apps that can do this. And I know of one that I tried out and didn't really like it. But anyways, there's stuff out there, different ways you can do this. But what I did is I broke out a spreadsheet that had a month's worth of days listed out, 1 to 31.
Mm-hmm.
And we listed out and went through, backtracked through the last few months so that we wouldn't miss anything, because this is how down to the wire it was.
Mm-hmm.
And made sure that all of our bills were accounted for and in that budget. And so that in itself is a great practice. But the thing that I think took it a step further is I wanted to see, I laid the cost in of each bill on the day that it was going to come out. Because one of my concerns was, I know that the numbers are shaking out that we can afford this, but is it going to be one of those things where, it's not actually feasible because all of these bills come out
of the month we have no money.
Yeah, exactly. So I did a column for our bills. I did a column for each of our incomes. And, Brian gets paid twice monthly. Mm-hmm. I get paid every week. So I broke it out as best I could to show that for our incomes. And then I put our bills in on each day that they come out. And then made sure I did my little summaries there and made sure that we were going to have enough money coming in. And one of the things is I remember looking at it and being like, okay, 1 week we're going to look really flush, but then we're going to be negative on the last week.
Which was hard for me to deal with.
Yeah. So it was like, okay, Brian, when we see this money in the account, that doesn't mean we can spend it. We need to keep it, for
doesn't
that.
Mean I can eat out.
Yeah, exactly. No panda. And so we need to keep it in the account so that we can cover this other month. So that was one of the things that I'm saying that because I'm not sure everybody looks at it in that view. And it does help, because if you're looking and you're like, why is this happening? I did the numbers and it's probably that. And the good thing is some bills you can move around. Mm-hmm. Most, I would say, you can, or can apply to. So if you need to.
This, and it's still good. We've actually gotten laxed on this exact part of it, which is part of our budgeting goal for 2025. But back then, we were you have to be everyone can write out hey, this is how much my mortgage is. This is how much this car payment is. The set bills. It's the ones.
It's the miscellaneous.
Yeah, it's the ones that don't have a set amount.
Yeah.
That are really hard. Remember we had to change the number because groceries started going up. At that time, and we had more kids. At that time, right. I think we were 120 to 150 on groceries.
Yeah. Those were the days.
Yeah, I know. And so we were allocating that, and then we had to go back, because that's the thing. You don't just set this and forget it.
Yeah. Oh, bless you. So,
but we had to go back and up some of those numbers on the ones that move. And you have to, so that was where we went through, and this helped with the single bank account, because one of the big things, I'll just give a personal example. I drive a lot. So therefore it is almost impossible for me to not stop at a gas station. A, I have to get fuel a lot. And then B, while I'm there, I'm here. So
may as well get this fountain drink.
Yeah, or something. And we literally had to put that number in there. How much do we spend there? We were going to Home Depot a lot to fix up stuff here. So we had to put a budget in of a hard number.
You're jumping ahead. Let me introduce this.
Oh, excuse me.
So I said I listed out all the bills, and then at the bottom there's I'm just telling, just so the good people can know where these numbers go.
Screen share your
no, I don't. But yeah, at the bottom I would have a miscellaneous section that would account for, like Brian's saying, these weekly, or even if it's not weekly.
My excursions.
Yeah, for Brian's excursions. No, it was things like, we, at the time, I don't think we hadn't had June in school yet. So we were paying for childcare, but it was a week to week thing. Mm-hmm. So I would budget for that. Groceries was another one that we would do week to week. And I would put that number in, times 4. Our tithes, that's something that doesn't have a set bill date on it, but we had
to figure out what day those checks were getting cashed.
Yes. Yeah. So so I figured all that in, and then like Brian said, Home Depot trips. I know we live in an old house and we're just moving in, so it's like we're gonna have things that we're going to
Mm-hmm.
Home Depot for. Try to figure in some of that money, and try to account for every dollar beyond just what the bills say are coming out. There's other things. Try to capture all of that and be conservative with it, and so that would go into the miscellaneous section at the bottom. And so then we would have whether we were in the black or the red based on our income and all of our bills and that miscellaneous section. But back to kind of this 5-year budget, what we wanted to do, we filled all that in, and then I just copied and pasted. Once I had that built out, I copied and pasted that to the right of this box setup, budget setup 4 more times, and labeled them the next years. So then we could account for, okay, we're not going to spend much this year, but then next year we'd like to do XYZ, and so I'm going to up our Home Depot expenditures to this. Or a big one for us was we knew we were going to put June in, some kind of schooling at some point, and so we accounted for that and those increases. And you can look at this a couple of different ways. If you're somebody who gets a yearly raise, you can figure that in too and see if it's going to cover it. Or if you want to show yourself like a % increase, or if you just don't want to count those chickens till they hatch. That's kind of how I roll. But
hard thing with that is if you do that, you got to factor inflation too.
Yeah, exactly. But the point is you go through and you say, like, for example, we would have different bills like, oh, we're going to pay this off this year. So then the following year we can delete that one out of there. And see where you shake out and what years are going to be really rough and what years you may be able to plan for a remodel or, buying a new car or whatever it may be, or just, stacking some savings. That would be nice. And it allowed us to see like, okay, this first year is going to be pretty rough.
Yeah.
But it is doable, and we can stick to that because here in the second or third or fourth year, it does get better. Or these things are going to change. Or, at that point, you may look at it and say, I don't think I can do that. Let me look for a part-time job to give us a little more room. But it just helps you not only plan for 2025, but what's it going to look like out in front of 2025, and what are the things that we should budget for, plan for, what do we want to do? We're staring down at looking with like, are we going to put Dylan in school and all these different things. So I think it's just a good practice to know things are going to change, but try to project that out. And it allows you to not be behind the 8 ball if you do have some goals. Which kind of brings me, okay, first of all, do you have any other thoughts on that?
Well, so yes, it's good. It got good projecting forward like that. You can see a light at the end of the tunnel sometimes. Now, some of that is just you and I are like long-term play people.
Yeah.
We don't mind just fantasizing about something and kind of waiting for it, which everybody's different and stuff, but we're perfectly content with like, one day I'm going to do this. And life happens, things come in to take those spots, but it kind of gave us, like, it was just looking at it on paper in that first year, it was kind of like, are we, like I said, we're a couple years removed from buying field level seats at the AL championship. Like we had disposable income, and now we were looking at not having that.
Yeah.
We really didn't have it at all. So what it also did, like for me, was, okay, there's things I like to do and stuff like that, and you really can't factor in birthdays, Christmas, things you're going to and stuff like that. And so I have always fortunately had hobbies that I make money at.
Right.
So it kind of took that to a different level of like, okay, well, if I can do this, and you've had some little side things you can pick up to make extra money, and I think that also helped us balance with the family of like, hey, I'm gonna go play music tonight instead of being like, I wish you were home. It's like, yeah, we need some money, so we want to go out next week. But it allowed you to stare at that, but also just like plan forward, and like even we've kind of worked in a longer sense of like, when do we think we want to retire backwards, and kind of account for things to be paid off. Now that's not really so much on paper. That's kind of just like conversations we've had, but it all kind of started from what does year 1 look like to year 5, and even factoring in like, hey, in year 5, kids are going to be wanting to do like activities. So let's, even though this bill should come off, let's leave this money in here for that.
Right.
Or even in the one we're kind of working through now, it's like, oh, hey, your truck's paid off in year 2, but you're going to need another truck. So we may as well leave that payment in and just start stacking it to the side. Like, we can't just start using it.
Right. And we're talking in really specifics right now, specific to like what we went through, where we're at and things. But I think this is the reason I thought this would be a good topic, is because I think it's relevant for everyone, whether you're somebody who's in the hole and trying to get out, or somebody who is in our situation, or somebody who is wealthy. I think it comes down to accounting for every dollar. And because what that is basically being a good steward over what God's given you. And you can play this game with money and with anything else, with any of your other blessings, right? But I think it's important to make sure that we are being good stewards over what we have, however little or much that might be. And to the point of not just accounting for every dollar, but also putting in those goals towards being, continuing to be a good steward. And what I'm getting at is like, I think somebody said something once, and I have no idea where I heard it or if it was a podcast or something I read, but they talked about, I want to be a good steward over my money so that I can, when called upon, I can be generous. For others. And that can look totally different for lots of people. Maybe it's donating to a charity or to a foundation, or, helping out your own family or people in need, taking care of, like, one of the things that we talk about is end care for parents, grandparents, etc.
Yeah.
And just not ever wanting to be in the position where we can't help and have to make really tough decisions. And those are sometimes just going to happen because that's what God's will is. But to the best of our ability, I think that it is good and pleasing and honoring our family and others. And as June would say, our brothers and sisters in Christ. It's this new thing.
Yeah.
To be good stewards over what we have. And for us right now, that looks like above and beyond tithing, because I think tithing is its own separate thing. I think that's giving your first fruits to God, but and trusting what He has planned for it, and not maintaining a lot of control over that. And I know that's hard for people, but I think that's part of it. I think that's part of what God asks us to do with tithing, is to trust Him with that. But also above and beyond tithing, being set up to be generous where God would have you. And again, that may look like, if you're barely making ends meet, it may just in this stage be taking care of your own house, your own family.
Yeah.
And your own goals that hopefully you're obviously prayerful about. But if you've listened to this whole budgeting thing and you're like, well, I don't have to do that, luckily. And I'm sure there are people out there, and I don't mean to sound, I'm not meaning to make that sound hoity-toity. That's just some people are blessed with that, and maybe it's generational or inherited, or you really busted your butt over it. Either way, it's nothing like that. It's more so just, you have those blessings. What are you doing with them? Is it glorifying God?
Yeah, think about the talents parable.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. You want to tell that? Let's see if we can wing it. So the
steward gave
mhm.
5 talents.
Yeah,
Or
1 talent to
yeah.
one, 5 to another, and 10 to the last one. And the one with the 1 went and buried it, and the one with 5, didn't he like earn another one? And then the one with 10,
the 10 doubled it
doubled
or
it.
something. The 5 went to like 7 or something, I think.
Yeah.
We are completely winging this.
Yeah.
I know it's Matthew because he was like the accountant.
Yes,
guy, so.
exactly.
So I know it's in Matthew. If you
Yeah.
want to go find it.
But the point is, when the master came back, the one servant was like, he dug up his 1 coin and was like, here, master. And he's like, you didn't.
Yeah, he banished him, called him
Yeah.
evil.
And this is a really tough one to understand. It's a good read.
I didn't understand this one.
No, it is difficult. Even now, reading it, it's like, what's the answer? Yeah, you should at least find it. We don't have to read it, but that way people can go back and read it. But he was happiest with the one who had been a good steward and like doubled his money. But he was happy with both of them.
Here we go. Matthew 25.
Okay, there you can go back and read that.
Starts at 14, but here's the one at the end. So it was 5, 2, and 1. So the 5 talents gained another 5, 2 gained another 2, 1 dug his, put it in the earth. But when the Lord came back to the one with 1, because this is where it gets hard. But his Lord said to him in response, you evil and lazy servant. You knew that I reap where I have not sown and gather where I have not scattered. Therefore, you should have deposited my money with the bankers, and then at my arrival, at least I would have received what is mine with interest. And what always got hard, let's see what this say. For everyone who has, more shall be given, and he shall have an abundance. But from him who has not, even what he seems to have shall be taken away.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good one to meditate on.
Well, I always like it because it's talents, which I think biblically you can find out like how much money that was. I forget what it is. But I like that it's the word talent because it doesn't all have to be money. Now, in this specific instance, we're talking about money with budgeting. So we'll keep it on that. But
you bring up a really good point. Yeah,
but
it doesn't all
just that in the parable. I don't think that's all what it completely means. But for us, even when you don't have extra money, there's probably something you can be doing to help manage your money. And if you have money in abundance, what else are you doing with it? Don't just dig a hole in the earth.
No, you make a really good point because there might be somebody listening who's like trying to dig out of a hole and they're like, oh, I guess I'm not of any use to God right now. That's not the case at all either.
Exactly.
The whole point is kind of, I keep saying like take account every dollar, but really it's like taking responsibility for whatever you have and knowing, being a good steward of it, which means knowing where it's going and what you're investing in, whether it be money or time or whatever. So, okay.
And we should have probably said this in the beginning. We know what Dave Ramsey says. And we just pick and choose what we listen to.
Yeah. There's a lot of good.
There's a balance there.
Yeah. If you need somebody with real tough love, go listen to Dave Ramsey because what he says works. It absolutely works.
Yeah, but we wouldn't be here doing this if we did either.
Yeah, exactly. I think there's
we always say there's like what Ramsey says and then there's real world, and we try to like
and I like I said, I think everything that he says works and is true. But what I think is sometimes less accounted for, which makes sense because it's what he makes his money on, right?
Yeah.
But is less accounted for would be quality and stages of life. Like I always say, the kids are only kids for a little bit. So anyway, any other thoughts on budgeting, New Year goals?
I'm just hungry.
I know we're hungry, so we'll check back in with you guys. I don't know. I have a couple of floating topics around, so I'm not sure exactly what we'll do for next week, but if you don't already, and actually I should say this because we do have, I think judging by the analytics, some new listeners that came in during the Advent
nice
reflections and stuff. So Welcome if this is your first topic to be diving into. I know we covered Feast of the Epiphany, but still. If you aren't already, go follow us.
Without the intro music.
Yeah, exactly. This is official. This is really official. If you aren't already, go follow us on social media. Our Facebook is just Discuss With Us, and our Instagram is, oh, bother. Okay, at Discuss_with us.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, so.
Like, share, tell all your friends.
Okay.
As we have unpacked our budget.
Yeah, probably shared too much.
Discuss.